Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting for Monday, December 27, 2021, our last board meeting of 2021. We had decided to be back on Zoom because not all of us were going to be easily available, but perhaps it was prescient because COVID is ramped up in all kinds of crazy ways, and Zoom feels like the right way to go. So the primary part of our meeting here is the audit presentation by Rob Danielle from O'Connor Davies. But before I lose whatever small audience we have on December 27th, let me just report that our COVID numbers are very, very, very high. We just got the numbers for the Christmas weekend, 52 new positives. We're at 208 positives so far in the month of December. That blasts through every record we have ever had. Just to put that in perspective, these numbers started to get counted in March of 2020. That's give or take 21, 22 months ago. And we're currently at a total of 1,100 positives. That would imply, as you can see, give or take 50 positives a month. We're at 208 positives through December 26th. So the December 26th positivity rate among tests in the county was over 15%, vastly higher than it's ever been. So who knows what it all means? We're struggling like all of us, but need to be aware that anything we can do to limit the spread of COVID we ought to be taking those steps, and that includes vaccinations, that includes boosters, and that includes wearing masks. As I wander around Pleasantville and our stores, I see a high degree of compliance, but not 100%. And I would just ask everybody to put on a mask when you're in a setting with other folks. It isn't the greatest thing in the world, but it isn't the worst thing either. And it's a whole lot better than spending 10 days in your basement while you wait out a quarantine. CDC announced today some modifications in the quarantine guidelines. All that is a work in progress. And obviously we're paying attention to it every day. But the other point I wanted to touch on is, as some of you perhaps know, on December 23rd, late in the day, the county gave us, as they gave all municipalities, a stack of COVID test kits based on population. So we had about 400 kits to distribute, and have done that via email. We currently have over 700 requests for 400 kits, so no reason to call Village Hall or to send a further email. We're already far beyond the supply we had, but we were working hard to try to deliver them in a fair way, working hard to try to avoid the situation where folks were standing out on Christmas Eve on a cold day for hours on end, and then get to the front of the line to find out the supply has been deleted, recognizing again that we're only able to give a single box to each household, and that's 2 kits in a box. So for a larger family, that isn't as helpful as some folks wanted it to be. I really, 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 really understand how frustrating it is and was for folks who knew there were some kits available and who just wanted them. But we feel like we've done the right thing, and we are in the process of actually delivering them by hand. So anyone want to add anything to that? So Rob Danielle is here, partner at PKF O'Connor Davies, a familiar face to all of us and to any of you who are enough of a civics geek to pay attention to our annual audit. Also on the call, Noreen Reagan, our treasurer, and Healy Shaw, our deputy treasurer. Thank you guys for coming. Take it away, Rob. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, is it possible that one of you can bring up?
Sure, I can share it, or I'll share it, and then you just tell me when to advance. How's that?
All right. Thank you, man.
Here we go. Got it?
Yes. Can you all see that?
Yes. Raise your hand. Okay, looking good.
All right. So again, good evening, and thank you for having me present the audit results for the Village of Pleasantville for the fiscal year ended May 31st, 2021. Before I begin, I just wanted to thank the village manager, Eric Morrissey, Noreen Regan, and the entire finance department, again, for their professionalism and really being available throughout the entire audit process while still performing their day-to-day responsibilities. So again, thank you. I've prepared a PowerPoint that I normally do to summarize the financial information that's included in your audit packet, which is probably 100 pages or so long. So I believe this summarizes, and then it gives you a better perspective than going through all those pages. So if you turn to the next slide, or the first slide, if you will. We'll go through a summary overview of what your responsibilities are, management, as well as our responsibilities as your external auditors. We'll spend a little time in a general fund, which is your main operating account, going through your 2021 revenues and expenditures compared to budget, compared to the prior year. And obviously a lot has happened because of the COVID pandemic. We extracted some of the major revenues. We'll talk about those. We gave you a 5-year history on those major revenues, and we did the same on the expense side with the 5-year history. There's a couple of graphs and charts that show you the 5-year history of the aggregate revenues and expenditures and the composition of your budget as far as revenues and expenses. Your 5-year fund balance analysis, and then we'll close with you do operate other funds. We'll briefly talk about those other funds. We'll talk about your debt service requirements, your outstanding bonds, and we'll close with some summary closing points. Next slide. So again, just a quick overview. We did come in. We were actually at the Village Hall. We did our audit in August into September. There's always some follow-up. We also audit the PCTV. So we need to get that report finalized to get it because it's a component unit of the village. It's included in the village report. Overall, we issued the report on November 9th, and included in your packets were the actual audit report. And included in there in the first couple of pages are independent auditor's report on the basic financial statements. It's an opinion that we opine on, and we'll talk about that shortly. Also included are what we call required communications to you folks, those charged with governance, together with our management letter. And we also audit the Justice Court, and we issue a separate report. Next slide. So very quickly, although we do prepare the financial statements, management is still responsible to select the appropriate accounting policies, and again, to fairly present the financial statements in accordance with the standards, generally accepted accounting principles. And again, since we prepare the financial statements, we make sure that they are in accordance with the updated standards. But more importantly, management is responsible to maintain effective internal controls over financial reporting, to comply with laws, regulations, and provisions of contracts, and really to provide us with all the financial records so that we can complete the audit. Next slide. Back up one. I'm sorry. Okay. Our responsibility, again, we perform the audit in accordance with the standards, generally accepted auditing standards. Again, the audit is designed to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from any types of material misstatements. That just means we don't look at every single transaction, but we do get enough coverage to give us a comfort level so we can form an opinion. So again, as I said, our objective is to form and express an opinion, and we have issued what is termed an unmodified opinion. An unmodified opinion is often referred to as a clean opinion. It is the highest level of assurance that an entity can receive, and it basically states that the financial statements present fairly the financial position of the village at a specific point in time as of May 31st, 2021, and in accordance with the accounting standards, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. We are also required to communicate in writing any deficiencies and internal controls that we consider to be what we call their 3 levels: material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, and then control deficiencies. I'm happy to report that although we did have some comments, none rose to the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency. Again, we are also required to communicate any fraud that we uncovered during the audit. And obviously, if we did, you would know about it before we got to this point. So again, no fraud or allegations of fraud were noted. We encounter no difficulties in the conduct of our audit. In fact, the finance department was very cooperative and again, very responsive to us. As far as the uncorrected and corrected misstatements, that just means in certain circumstances, if we come up with an entry that we feel is not material, we could pass on it. We did not have any journal entries that we passed on. All entries that we proposed were recorded by management and included in your financial statements. Next slide. Okay, so this is where we get into the numbers, and here's a high-level look at your general fund revenues and expenditures compared to your budget. Again, this you can see there are 4 columns on the page. The original budget is what the village board approved back in the spring of 2020. And again, from a high level, your aggregate revenues were a little over $15.9 million. Your expenditures were also $15.9 million. There was a small deficiency of expenditures over revenues. And then you factor in what we call other financing sources and uses, and these are transfers, generally transfers in. You did budget an amount to transfer in from the water fund, and transfers out are usually monies that go to your debt service fund to cover your principal and interest on your bonds, and transfers out to the capital projects fund to continue with your major capital improvements. So you come down in the first column in the original budget, and you can see that net change in fund balance, the bracketed $606,000. This is what the village used of its own funds to balance the budget. And it's really made up of 2 components, the larger being $571,000, $229,000, what's included in the budget that you were going to utilize from your own fund balance to balance the budget. And the small amount, $35,000, were prior year encumbrances, or what we call commitments that you entered into that you didn't receive the goods or services. So those automatically rolled from last year, and you were using last year's budgeted dollars to pay for those. The middle column is your final budget, and during the year, there's some unanticipated revenues that you accept, and certainly unanticipated expenditures that you may incur. And you can see, again, from a high level, your budget was amended maybe $100,000, both on revenues and expense side. The more significant piece being your transfers out, you can see went from $956,000 to $1.3 million. And you did amend the budget a little over $400,000 to do some capital projects, specifically the Memorial Plaza project, the Clinton Street Center improvements. You also did purchase a DPW truck. So all of those were funded from your own resources, from your own fund balance. The third column is your actual results. And you can see again from a high level, your actual revenues came in at $15.8 million, about $183,000 less than you anticipated. The savings occurred really on the expenditure side to the tune there. You can see $2.7 million. And a large portion of that was due to some closures due to COVID. We'll talk about that in a minute. You take your revenues, subtract your expenditures, and you have an excess of revenues of $2.5 million. You factor in your transfers, roughly a net of $1.3 million, and you end the year with revenues that exceeded expenditures by $1.1 million. So, even during COVID times, and again, even you had programs that were canceled, you were able to still generate a surplus, if you will. So you're able to add the $1.1 million to your opening fund balance of $6.1 million, and you end the year at $7.2 million in fund balance, and we'll talk about that in slide 13. But more importantly, I just wanted to point out that the third line from the bottom, that net change in fund balance, as I mentioned before, if everything went according to your plan, you would have anticipated using $606,000 of your own funds to balance the budget. And in the middle column, you can see that was amended upwards to utilize a little over $1 million to balance the budget. But from the actual results, you can see that not only did you not need to utilize the $1 million, but you were able to generate $1.1 million in surplus, if you will. So that swing from anticipating using $1 million to actually generating $1 million represents all the way to the right a budgetary surplus of $2.1 million. Next slide. So again, how did you get there? And these are probably 6 or 7 categories of your major revenues that make up roughly close to 90% of your budget. We start with your property taxes. You can see your property taxes are up maybe about $300,000, but well within the property tax cap formula. Also included in there, you did have some full assessment valuations of some of these subdivisions that occurred in 2020 that were finalized in 2021. So again, you didn't break the cap in 2021. Your non-property tax distribution from the county, you can see that represents your sales tax, and those revenues are up over $300,000 compared to the prior year. But I suppose because of the pandemic, some of the budget numbers were revised. You can see that actually did rather well and more than doubled of what you anticipated. And that mostly is due to people being at home, a lot of internet sales, and that generated that surplus. Your parks and recreation charges, again, you can see those were heavily impacted by COVID pandemic that pretty much began in March of 2020. Your after school programs, your day camp programs, not your after school, your day camp programs, your festivals, your annual permits. A lot of those didn't happen or were canceled. You can see that in 2020, you generated $1.1 million. In 2021, you generated less than $100,000. So that there is your variance to your final budget. Although your revenues are down, we'll see in the next slide that your expenditures are down because obviously some of those programs didn't occur. Also impacted by the pandemic were your parking permits and parking meters. Again, that's down about $135,000 compared to the prior year, and roughly a little over $100,000 less than your final budget. Your fines and forfeited bail were also impacted due to the pandemic. Obviously, the courts were closed for a lengthy period of time. People worked from home, less vehicles on the road, less tickets were issued. So those revenues are down 50% compared to 2020 and roughly a little over $132,000 less than your final budget. Your mortgage tax, surprisingly, the mortgage tax increased, obviously due to the low interest rates. There were mortgage refinancing. Home sales were up in Westchester. Folks are relocating from the city. So you were able to generate almost $200,000 in mortgage tax compared to $166,000 in the prior year. And that exceeded your budget by a little over $70,000. And then just the bottom line, you do budget a transfer in from the water fund. The village is allowed to transfer in a reasonable profit from the water fund to cover administrative costs. And that could vary year to year. And in 2021, village made a decision to not transfer funds from the water fund. Next slide. Next slide is those same 6 or 7 categories. We gave you a 5-year perspective. And again, you can see starting with property taxes, they're up annually, but well within a 2% property tax cap formula. So you haven't exceeded the property tax cap, at least over the past 5 years. Your non-property tax distribution from the county, again, your sales tax. Sales tax has been trending upwards since 2017. The county, I believe in August of 2019, implemented a 1% increase in the sales tax. So you can see that also kicked in and had favorable results in 2020 and well into 2021. As I mentioned before, your parks and recreation charges, again, those were trending upwards since 2017, but obviously due to the pandemic, programs were shut down, and obviously you see the drastic decline in 2021. Same thing with your parking permits. They were trending upwards, and again, those were impacted by the pandemic as well. So those, as I said, usually they range around the $500,000, $550,000 mark, and in 2020, 2021, they dropped to a little over $300,000. Fines and forfeited bail also, again, generally trend around the $300,000 mark. And due to the courts being closed, it was cut in half in 2021. So we hope that these three categories, your parking permits, your recreation charges, and your fines and forfeited bail, obviously have an upswing when things get back to normal, if they do ever get back to normal. And your mortgage tax revenues, again, trending upwards, and actually have, as I mentioned before, the actually 1% increase that kicked in the later end of 2019 also impacted you on a favorable side in 2020 and 2021. And again, the transfers in the water fund are going to happen on a needed basis. And obviously, the transfer didn't occur in 2021. Next slide. So we try to do the same for the major expenditures in the general fund, and we picked 5 or 6 categories. Again, you can see we compared your actual 21 results to your final budget, and then all the way to the right were your 2020 actual results. And you can see your police expenditures were pretty much even compared to 2020. Although you did hire 2 new police officers in 2021, that was offset with a decrease in overtime cost and a decrease in other types of paid benefits as well. So net, you're pretty much even with 2020. Your transportation costs, again, there were savings compared to your budget. This occurred because there was less repairs and maintenance. There were less fuel costs compared to 2020, and your actual expenditures came in about $233,000 less than your final budget. Your parks and recreation charges programs, again, decrease of about $1 million compared to the prior year, again, due to the program cancellations, your day camps, your festivals, your pool. But again, that's directly related to a decrease in the revenue side that I mentioned before. Your employees and your police retirement, pretty consistent, slightly up. Again, this is based on the reported salaries. There was a slight increase in the retirement rates. So although it's up about $40,000, not significant in terms of a rate increase, but that could change in future years as well. Health insurance was pretty consistent with last year. It's actually slightly down. The premiums went up, but that was offset with the village offered an insurance buyout, and a lot of the new employees opted for that health insurance buyout. And that's also was coupled with some retirees, I believe, that had reached the Medicare eligible age. So now Medicare becomes the primary insurance, and the village was able to save in respect to that. And then lastly, your transfers for debt service fund. These are known. These are to cover your principal and interest on outstanding bonds that is due. So roughly pretty consistent with 2020. And then your transfers to the capital projects fund. Those are going to vary on an annual needs basis, if you will. You can see in the original budget, the village adopted $232,000. But as I mentioned, as the year went on, he did some other capital work and amended the budget upwards about $400,000, but pretty consistent with what he did in 2020. Next slide. And again, those same expenditures, just to give you a 5-year look back. Again, the police expenditures are trending upwards, but have remained relatively flat in 2021 compared to 2020, despite the pandemic. Transportation costs, and again, these include your central garage, your snow removal, your street lighting, your metered parking, trending down since 2017, increased in 2021 due to, I believe there was increased snow removal costs. You did purchase substantial road salt, and there were equipment purchases that didn't occur in the previous year. Your parks and recreation programs, your costs were roughly just under $3 million, $2.9 million in 19 and 20, and have declined in 2021. As I mentioned before, consistent with the decline in the parks and recreation revenues, again, due to the program closures. Your employee and your police retirement is going to vary based on payroll and based on the rates. So not significant swings. As I mentioned, salaries were up slightly and the rates went up slightly, which contributed to the $140,000 increase in 2021. Health insurance, again, pretty consistent over the past 4 years. The premiums did increase, not significantly, but as I mentioned, they were offset with the buyouts and the some retirees that became Medicare eligible, and that became their primary insurance. And again, your transfers to the debt service, this is based on principal and interest that are due, and you can see as bonds are being paid off or paid down, you can see that those costs have gone from $1.2 million down to $700,000 in 2021. And again, your capital projects fund are going to vary on an annual basis, and that you can see there are swings over the past 5 years, actually consistent with 2020, but you are doing a lot of capital work and utilizing your own funds to do that. Next slide. Next slide is just very quickly, just a chart to show you aggregate revenues and expenditures over the past 5 years. So your revenues, good thing, have been outpacing your expenditures over the past 5 years, but due to the pandemic, you can see that in 2021, your aggregate revenues and expenditures are actually down compared to the previous years, although your revenues have exceeded the expenditures in the aggregate because of the program closures and things that I mentioned. You can see that your revenues and your expenditures were climbing, but for 2021, they're down a few $100,000, both on the revenue side and almost $1 million on the expense side. Next slide. Next slide is just a pie chart. I just wanted to give you the top are your sources of revenues, the bottom are your sources of expenditures. And really the top three drivers on the revenue side of the budget, you can see the blue shaded area, your real property taxes, they make up just under 74% of your budget. The brown, what's called non-property taxes, that's your sales tax, that makes up a little over 12% of your budget. And then your departmental income, which includes your parking meters and items of that nature, are roughly about 7% of the budget. And down below is your expenditure side. You can see that your public safety, your police, as well as your related benefit, the related benefits make up about 52% of the budget. Your culture and recreation, which are your parks program, your parking, make up about 13% of the budget. And then lastly, what we call general support, which are your administrative costs, make up roughly about 11% of the budget. Next slide. So I mentioned that you ended the year with $7.2 million in fund balance. That's the 2021 column. I gave you a little perspective going back 5 years. Great news, you can see that you've been adding to your fund balance. It actually dropped in 18, but since 18, you've been adding surplus, if you will, to the bottom line. If we focus on the 2021 column, of the $7.2 million, a little amount is, and I won't get into the details, but a portion of it is segregated to what we call non-spendable fund balance, just a little over $1,100. You do have about $48,000 restricted for future capital projects. And what we call the signed fund balance, you have just under $20,000 of what we call encumbrances or open purchase orders. Again, that $19,873 are going to automatically roll and amend the current budget year in the 2022 budget. Obviously, you'll notice that when we talk about it next year. But more importantly, the $539,000 is what the village board used of its own fund balance to balance the budget and thus provide a form of property tax relief. So they utilized $539,000 of its own fund balance in order to balance the budget. We like to compare the unassigned, the $6.6 million is the free and clear money, and that can be used for, the village's needs, including capital projects. We like to compare the unassigned fund balance And I apologize, there's a little error down below. We compare it to the 2022 adopted budget. The dollars are correct. The 2022 is wrong. But your fund balance is a little over 40%, which is an extremely healthy fund balance. And that's going to vary for every community based on capital needs and items and such. We are often asked, where should fund balance be? And nobody has a magical formula. The government finance officers does have a recommendation that your unassigned fund balance should be at a minimum 2 to 3 months of annual appropriations as a reserve for some type of unanticipated expenditures or revenue shortfalls. If you do the math, you're well above that. So again, a healthy general fund balance. Next slide. So very quickly, you do operate other funds. You do have a water fund. The water fund generated a surplus of about $300,000 in 2021. You ended the year with $1.8 million in fund balance, and that fund balance is specifically assigned for water purposes. You do have a debt service fund, and really monies come in from the various funds to pay principal and interest. So money comes in, money goes out. There's roughly $83,000 that's been accumulated interest and or premiums when you issue bonds, and that money is restricted for debt service, and that can be used down the road, appropriated to pay down debt service costs. You have an active capital projects fund. Again, revenue sources are generally transfers in from mainly the general fund, and you did spend $418,000 on capital outlay. You have a little under $550,000 remaining in fund balance to continue with those capital projects. You do operate a refuse fund for your collection and disposal of solid waste. Again, that has a fund balance of $454,000. Again, generated a slight surplus of about $130,000. And you do have a special purpose fund to account for certain trusts, and that money is specifically set aside for parklands and trust to the tune of $637,000. Next slide. Next slide is as I mentioned before, your debt service requirements. At the top, the village has $6.2 million in outstanding bonds. Those are payable to maturity. You can see that a couple of those bonds, the first two, will be paid off in 2022, and the remaining bonds are payable to 2033. We are required to report the payments to maturity at the bottom there over the next 5 years, and then in increments of 5 years. So I like to compare what is going to be due in 2022 relative to your adopted budgets in the various funds. So principal and interest due in 2022, assuming no other debt is issued, are a little over $1 million, $1,058,000. The general fund portion is $659,000 on a $16.5 million budget. So generally, your debt service requirements for the general fund are under 4%, which is relatively low compared to a village of your size. Water fund, again, $380,000 of the $1,058,000 on a $3.6 million budget, roughly a little over 10%. And the refuse funds has a small portion, $18,000 on a $1.1 million budget, a little over 1.5%. Next slide, just some closing remarks. Again, the continuation of the village's overall good financial health can be credited to you folks, the leadership of the village board and management. As I mentioned before, you have remained within a 2% tax cap, what is termed the tax levy limitation law, at least over the past 5 years. And you do have some cost-effective purchasing procedures and tight appropriation or department controls. And why is overall good financial health important? Obviously, it's going to assist you when you compute your village tax levy. It's going to improve cash flow, and it'll eventually impact your credit rating if and when you do decide to go out and borrow. You currently have a AA2 bond rating. With such a good fund balance, if you do decide to go out and bond some more capital projects, that'll certainly reduce your borrowings and your interest costs. And having that fund balance set aside, as I mentioned before, it can fund unexpected expenditures, or as you saw in 2021, it could fund certain revenue shortfalls while still preserving your village program. So overall, despite the pandemic, pretty good year as far as the finances of the village. That's really it. I know there was a lot of numbers I went through, but if anyone has any questions.
Thank you for that, Rob.
Yeah, so Rob, as we look at, can you go back to the capital table of the debt coming off?
Yes. It's slide 15.
Got it.
So understanding that these interest rates, vary by the different bonds that are coming off. If we had exactly the same interest rate for a comparable term bond going forward, and we issued it in the original amount for the same period, would it carry the same debt service? In other words, would we be neutral?
What were you looking to issue? Like what dollar amount?
I'd say, so for instance, we have the original issue amount from 2005 of $6.1 million. Right now, I assume that the fact there's only $10,000 outstanding has more to do with the fact that it's not a full year than anything else, right?
Well, right. It's expiring in January.
Right. So if we looked at what we paid for last year on that bond when we had a full year of interest, then we'd have an idea at 4 to 4.25% what $6 million would cost us if the term is the same, right?
Okay.
Is that right?
I mean, we have debt service runs from bond counsel based on various total original issue amounts and various interest rates. For example, we're looking at the pool improvements and imagining that is in the $3 million range, and we have debt service runs for that. You, I think, have them too.
Yeah, I've seen those. I'm just trying to compare them to what's coming off.
So, I mean, the issue ultimately is what we're saving in a given year in total principal and interest from it coming off, right?
Right.
And as you can see, from 2022 to 2023, we save almost $200,000, and then it edges down slowly for the next 3 or 4 years, right?
But the biggest bond just came off. So what was our savings between 2021 and 2022? That's not on the table, I think.
So, I mean, we obviously have that number. We can go back and look at last year's.
I'm just curious, it's like, because we have improvements or necessary repairs to Village Hall to do. We have the pool project, and we have Manville Road, 3 things that we know that are all potentially on the horizon. And I'm just trying to get an idea of at what point we're sort of level with where we were. So if we did all of those, if we bonded all those things and paid some from fund balance in the next 12 months, what amount of principal could we get to maintain level payments with where we were 12 months ago, assuming that the interest rate is whatever it is today?
So, I mean, that's a fairly easy number to come up with. Not really an audit number, but a financial forecasting number.
Noreen, is it possible to get back to me on that?
Yeah, we could certainly do that, and I believe the interest rates are even lower, so that's favorable as well. But yeah, we could certainly to get you back to the $1,050,000, what you can borrow, and we could do that. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have those numbers, Rob. So.
Yeah, we have like 3/4 of that. There's just one piece that we haven't added into it that will help us mentally, I think, understand sort of what keeps us at the same level and what ends up either taking from fund balance or increasing, debt service payments or reducing it.
Sure. Okay.
Fairly conservative, as you can tell.
And you can tell from under the purpose, you did refinance a lot of these bonds. You can see the interest rate was a lot higher than this, and you did refund certain bonds over the past years, and that dropped your debt service a little bit as well.
Right.
So, Rob, obviously a significant, maybe the significant unexpected development for the fiscal year ending 5/31/2021 was this spike in sales tax revenue, which arguably I don't think anybody could have predicted. Right? Maybe that happened at New York City's expense, because if I am correct, and I'm not certain of this, their numbers tanked. So what does your crystal ball say about sales tax revenues?
That's a great question. And we get the reports from the county, and even it's still showing an upswing. So I don't think that's dropping. There's a lot of people shopping online.
Right.
So I think that I think that's still an area where you'll see exceed your budget. But I mean, obviously I can't tell what the full year would bring, but it's compared to the recent reports we got from Westchester County, sales tax is on the upswing.
Yeah, which is a good story for sure. And then, recognize since the 5/31 date, we spent close to $1 million on various other capital projects, which the fund balance numbers don't show because we've had these expenses. So at any rate, I mean, the good news here is that we're in a strong position. The bad news is we've got quite a bit of capital money that must be expended, and quite a bit of capital money that we'd like to expend if we feel as though we have the financial flexibility to do it. So stay tuned.
The other thing I wanted to add, which I don't know the numbers, but I know the village got some federal money, the American Rescue Plan.
Right.
Maybe Eric could tell us, it's probably a significant amount. And some of that money can be used for, water projects and things like that. So maybe Eric could tell us what the village received.
Yeah, so we've chatted with the board about that. It's about $380,000 for this year, and close to the same for next year as well. There's been some discussions about the items that we're going to use it on, and there's certainly not a lack of projects on the horizon that the money would actually could be utilized for. So more to come there, but certainly a good resource for the village.
Yes.
All right. I thank you, Rob. Any questions from anybody else?
No, but thank you. It was illuminating.
Yes, and I'd like to thank Rob, Catherine, and the whole team from O'Connor Davies, especially with their support with the transition in our department, and also a shout out to Mary Schwartz, who this is really her final capstone project.
And she didn't sign on. Come on.
We'll send her the recording. We'll send her
the recording. That's right.
Yeah, in a presentation box on a CD. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you to, the folks on the third floor. Eric, Noreen, having returned to her past life in the treasurer department, now in the top seat, and Healy, who's stepped in and been up to speed day one. So very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Noreen and Healy make us all look good. So thank you, Noreen, Healy, and thank you, Rob.
Thank you, folks.
All right. I had a couple of more announcements to make. We'll relieve you of duty, Rob. Go back to your regular life. Come on, it's a holiday week.
Yeah, thank you all. Happy New Year.
And likewise to you. One piece that I wanted to remind folks of is that if you are on the village email list, which you can easily sign up for at pleasantville-ny.gov, that is a mechanism where you can find out all kinds of useful things, but one of them would be the availability of these test kits for COVID this weekend. But the other point that is, I think, going to be a benefit to everybody is that we have some new tools in the sanitation scheduling department. You want to talk about that, Eric?
Sure. So we partnered with Sustainable Westchester to launch a mobile, it's called a mobile recycling app, but it provides information, detailed information on what can be recycled, along with detailed information about the individual homeowners' sanitation and recycling schedules. So anyone can go to the App Store, download the app, put in your address, and you'll have at your fingertips your sanitation schedule, and then a encyclopedia of information on items that can be recycled and can't be recycled. So we're excited to have launched that last week. We'll continue to do outreach and spread the good word around the community, but we think it's going to be a good resource, and thank Sustainable Westchester for their partnership.
We actually gotten a few positive comments on my end already about that.
As have I.
Reminders, yeah.
So the app is called Recycle Right Westchester. It's available on Android and Apple iPhone. If you don't have a smartphone, you can also go to our website at pleasantville-ny.gov, click into the sanitation schedules, and that will give you the same kind of information. You can type in your address. But either of those alternatives, that is the app or the website, give you the opportunity to set up automatic reminders if you're so inclined. So you can get a reminder on a weekly basis for your various pickups if you have trouble keeping track of it. So it's a great resource. And let me remind everybody, we don't have too many people signed on, but we have a village-wide extra pickup on Wednesday, the 29th, for paper and cardboard. Have you got that right, Eric?
That's right. That's right.
So if you have an overflowing pile of stuff from your holiday festivities, on this Wednesday, put out paper and cardboard, and we'll pick it up. But as was the case last week, Friday is a holiday, and so there will be no regular paper pickup. That will occur on Wednesday. And if you had a typical Friday day, whatever you had on Friday turns to Thursday, which is bottles and cans.
That's right.
And also the recycling center has been closed. You know, it's closed on Saturday. Of course, will be closed this Saturday, and it's open this Thursday.
That's right.
From what, 3 to 5 or something?
From I have it written down.
8 a.m. to
From
3
8
p.m.
to 3, which for those of us who have full compost bins is an important.
Yes, right. Oh, we're making compost in our own homes. All right. Any other announcements from anybody? All right. To the resolutions. 322. Nicole, here I can share my screen if that's helpful.
Yes,
Hold
thanks.
on a minute here. Got it?
Okay. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the minutes of the regular meeting held on December 13th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Actually, it probably should have been Paul. Let's go back to you, Paul, 323.
Okay. Look at that.
I meant to give you the long one. So Nicole always gets the long ones. So
I feel like you did that on purpose. You knew
I
where you
did.
were going.
Yeah, I must have. Give me some cover.
Okay. Whereas the ridge caps located on the rooftops are in very poor condition, they have exceeded their life and have cracks and damage to them that was not previously known to the village and was discovered during separate roofing work. And whereas in case of a public emergency arising out of an accident or other unforeseen occurrence or condition whereby circumstances affecting public buildings, public property, or the life, health, safety, or property of inhabitants of political subdivision or district therein require immediate action which cannot await competitive bidding or competitive offering, contracts for public work, or the purchase of supplies, material, or equipment may be let by the appropriate officer of the political subdivision pursuant to the provisions of the General Municipal Law, Section 103, Paragraph 4, parentheses 4. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby establishes that there is an urgent need to abate the health and safety hazard arising from the ridge top tiles located on the roof of Village Hall to justify the village's bypass of the statutory competitive bidding procedures for public works contracts and the village's hiring of private contractors to remove all ridge caps and nails and install new ridge caps. And be it further resolved that the Village of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor or the village administrator to enter the Village of Pleasantville into contract with BDW Roofing, LLC, in the amount of $31,114.82 for the materials and labor utilized in connection with emergency repairs to the roof of Village Hall.
Is there a second?
Second.
Pretty self-explanatory. We talked about it in a work session. Eric, anything to add?
Nope. Just another item, dealing with an old facility, old building. So glad we caught it when we did.
Tile roofs are great and durable, but expensive to fix. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. David, 324.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments for fiscal year ending 2022 as listed below. Amount of $32,000 to account A1620.417 Village Hall repairs for Village Hall roof repair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. We'll keep our squeegee sequence. Nicole, 325.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the abstract for payment of claims dated December 27th, 2021 for fiscal year ending in 2022, covering check numbers 102310 to 102405. From the general fund, $113,694.90. From the special purpose fund, $250. From the water fund, $127,156.67. From the capital fund, $3,562. From the refuse fund, $6,156.91 for a total of $250,820.45. And the payment of claims is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the payment of claims? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Paul, 326.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a service agreement with Lightpath effective for a term of 3 years. The agreement with Lightpath is attached to the description of this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Eric, Lightpath is clearly the answer.
Yeah, they are the most competitively priced. They have renewed their contract with the county, so we're able to piggyback on their pricing. We've realized pretty significant savings, but we did have to retire some of our old Centrix lines. So some of these old fax lines and prehistoric lines, let's say, that we've been paying for but not utilizing. So there is some work that we're doing to retire those lines and transition them to other sources. But all in all, this is a good deal for us.
Okay, other comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. David, 327.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator and police chief to sign the agreement with Westchester County for TRAX, Traffic and Criminal Software Program, for the electronic capture of ticket and accident data and the electronic transfer of said data to the DMV in court.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is many pages of agreements, but it doesn't cost us anything, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion approved. 328, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the hiring of the following part-time recreation assistants of code 0269. Marley Pitcher, at $50 an hour, effective the 18th of January, 2022. Part-time available for the after-school program. Further resolved that such appointments are contingent upon successful completion of mandatory background checks.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, and as Eric has commented in the past, the hourly rate is higher for people who do specific things, right?
The specialty after-school programs, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Paul, 329.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the hiring of Deborah A. Patton and Matthew G. Williams as a part-time school crossing guard, job code 141 at the hourly rate of $20.62 with an effective date of January 3rd, 2022. Said appointment is subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks to a maximum of 52 weeks.
Is there a second?
Second.
Good news to add to our list. These jobs have been hard to fill. Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 230, David.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign a service agreement with iWorQ.
Is there a second?
Second.
Eric, this is building department software.
That's right. Our building department, like many others, currently uses a software called Municity. They are moving away from our current platform, essentially making everybody upgrade to Municity 5. That would come with an annual cost of $14,000. It is a bit of, according to Robert Hughes, our building inspector, a bit of overkill for what we need as a village of our size. iWorQ is used by a bunch of municipalities in upstate New York. It's more simplified, more streamlined, a little bit less expensive. So it is Robert's preference and recommendation that we move forward with iWorQ.
Okay. Comments, questions? I certainly would defer to his judgment. He's the guy that knows. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Last one, Nicole, 331.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator or police chief to sign an agreement with Power DMS effective January 1st, 2021 until May 31st, 2023. And the agreement is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is software that would allow us to put our police policies and procedures on an internet platform as opposed to a big fat notebook. It's annualized about $5,500 a year. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. All right, let me stop my share. Any further comment from any member of the board or a member of the public?
Happy New Year.
Likewise, no takers on that front. So in a moment, we'll have a motion to go into a brief executive session on matters of real estate. But in the meantime, here it is, December 27, amid all the challenges of 2021. I think the village of Pleasantville has shown its true colors as it always does. And here's hoping the world rights itself in 2022 a little bit. And when we're doing this a year from now, we can not be talking about high COVID numbers. So in the meantime, thank you all. Thank you everyone in the community and stay safe. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Happy New Year all. We're going to log off and then Eric sent the link for the brief executive session.
Have a good night.
Likewise.
Good night.
Good night, Alyssa.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thanks for your help with the COVID tests.
No problem. I'm almost done.
You.
You say that until the next challenge is thrown in your path.
That's right.
True. But
Right.
this one's almost over, which is positive.
It certainly is. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.